Hey everybody, Chris Lindsay here, and you're listening to Pitch List. Join us on a deep dive into the heart of what makes writing songs and making music so magical. Let's find out what makes songwriters tick, and along the way, remember why we love music. Welcome to Pitch List.
Hey everybody, I'm Dana, the producer of Pitch List, and I am so excited to announce today's episode. This week, Chris sat down with singer-songwriter Leland, who's written some of pop music's most influential and catchiest releases of the past few years. Songs like Rare, Selena Gomez, Bloom, Troye Sivan, Hideaway by Daya, and many more. He's also making waves in the TV film industry, music producing for RuPaul's Drag Race and Hulu series Love Victor, and even picking up a Golden Globe nomination for writing a song in the Boy Erased film. Listen on to hear their chat about full circle moments, how being a queer songwriter has impacted his music career, and how the hustle continues even after getting a publishing deal. He's an incredibly talented writer, and as you'll hear, he has worked his ass off to get where he is today. So without any further ado, here's Chris's chat with Leland.
Good morning. Chris Lindsay here with another episode of Pitch List. Today, we've got a really cool writer. I'm talking to him from Studio City, California, which would be just over the hills and from LA proper into, Studio City, right off Ventura Boulevard, I think. We're not going to give you your address. Don't worry. This is a really successful pop, but I'm going to back up. He has some really great Nashville connections, but he's killing it as a pop writer and artist. This is Leland. How are you, man?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm good. As you can tell, I'm amped up. I just had my coffee and I'm ready to rock.
I did too. Mine's going to kick in any second. And then
that's right. You're 2 hours.
A million miles an hour.
Yes, you were 2 hours earlier than us. Now, let's start with the Nashville connection since I said that. I heard you went to Belmont. Is that true?
I did. Yep.
Okay. Were you originally from the South? Where are you from originally?
Yeah, I am born and raised in Mississippi.
Right on. What town?
So I was born in Biloxi, but I went to high school in Ocean Springs, just over the bridge. Mm-hmm. And my dad was in the Air Force. So we were in Mississippi for the majority of my growing up years. But we did live in Italy for a couple of years, and that was amazing and incredible. And then from Italy back to Mississippi.
Well, that had to be a little bit of a culture shock.
It was both times.
Yeah, that's about as far as, that's crazy.
Yeah.
And then, so did you, when you went to Belmont, were you sort of on the fence exactly what you wanted to do, or did you know?
Growing up in Mississippi, I didn't really see myself in a lot of places. So I didn't really see myself represented or in others besides a love for music. So I gravitated towards people that loved music, of course. But I got to Belmont really not knowing who I was, aside from just loving music and wanting to sing music and wanting to write. But then as things started to click for me, I realized, okay, I don't know who I am as an artist or really as a person yet. So even though I love performing, let me sort of set that on the back burner and write for others while I figure all these things out. And I love writing songs, and I love writing for other people. And there was very much a culture there at Belmont of writing for friends. And the friends we would all be in the showcases or auditioning for the showcases. And so my friend Jenna would need a song for Country Showcase. So I would, go down to the practice room and try to write a song for her for that, or a friend who was in the auditioning for the Pop Urban. And so that's sort of through those experiences is how I discovered my love of writing songs for other people. And then I just sort of ran with that.
Wow. And so, because looking at your resume, and we'll go over that in the intro later as we put the show together. But I mean, these are huge pop names: Selena Gomez, Troye Sivan, Andy Graham. I mean, I could go on and on here. It's interesting to me that, but you're from Mississippi, so you probably, if you didn't like, I wasn't a huge country music fan when I was a kid. I listened to more rock, but you can't help but be around it if you grow up in the South. Is that so? Did you sort of absorb it that way?
Absolutely. I think I absorbed it without realizing. I remember getting in my dad's Dodge Ram 1500, opening up the center console and seeing all the country CDs. And I can remember, taking them out and looking at them one by one. And so a part of me, I mean, I love country music, most country music. And I've always loved writing for female artists, whether that's country music, pop music, R&B music, but yeah, country has always been, it's been the lyric, it's been the storytelling, it's been just the how country music feels timeless. That is something that even now there was a point where I fell in love with country music all over again. And as country music has evolved, and as the community there has evolved, that's been really beautiful to be a part of that.
And it has evolved. I've been here, I don't even know anymore, but at least 25. It might be even more than 25 years. And I moved here from California as a young writer and pretty liberal guy, and this was a very conservative town in 1995. And it is just wildly different now than it was. And it's awesome. It's awesome. It has surprised me coming here in 95 and the way it was. I thought, well, I would have never imagined we'd get the kind of change that we've had here culturally. I don't know if there was one open gay writer in Nashville. There were gay writers, and as we all knew, but I don't know if there was even one openly gay writer in town.
Wow.
In 1994.
Wow.
Isn't that crazy?
You think, I can't imagine, I can't imagine being truly just like who I am. And I mean, when I did arrive to Nashville yet again, the first time I sort of saw myself represented was when I took the ASCAP pop songwriters workshop that was led by Daryl Brown.
Right.
And that was sort of my first experience of seeing someone openly gay, happy, and successful.
Yep.
And that did wonders for me. And I told Daryl that actually, we've stayed really close, but I told him that when we were doing I think a panel for ASCAP not too long ago. But yeah, I can't imagine, being in that, because for me, I've been very fortunate to feel like my sexuality has never held me back. And no matter where I've been, or if it has, I haven't realized it. And I've never thought about it because, this as like a writer, it's so hard to make it as a songwriter or to pay your bills with songwriting that you sort of have this blind drive and blind ambition of like, it's just going to work out.
Yeah.
And so I never really thought about other factors affecting my trajectory. I just was like, I'm here to do it and I'm going to do it. But I did have to, for me, I had to leave Nashville, move to LA in order to then write songs that Nashville artists were listening to then get in those rooms. And so for me, that was a strategy that I definitely had in the back of my mind. It took a while, but it's something that, it worked out and it works out in all of our like own unique, crazy ways.
Absolutely. Absolutely it does. Yeah. But I tell you one thing, and you've said this and it's come up on our podcast multiple times. Usually when someone's doing what's really in their heart, no matter how far forward or different it might be, that's usually the right thing, but I think the moral of that story is that doing what's in your, I know it sounds so trite, but what you really feel like, making your music and your songs exactly how you want to make them without any compromise.
Yeah.
It's actually the quickest path to success. And I think it's hard for people to believe that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think, I was in a community here in LA with my friends who we were all sort of just starting out together and just recognizing that we all were paying our dues, no matter who you are, and some people have to pay their dues a little longer than others. And, but recognizing that it's all a part of the process.
Absolutely. My wife and I say it's like college. You got at least 4 years here. Mm-hmm. Yeah. At least that's your best outcome would be 4. If you were fortunate, maybe you had worked a little harder before you got here. I've seen guys like Josh Osborne, who's one of the most talented guys on the planet, 10, 12 years before he had a hit, which is just crazy, Yep. Anyway, it's great that you know the town and that because you're so diverse in what you're doing. Who did you like growing up? So we talked a little bit about your father was a country fan, right? But who are you into? Who are your sort of guiding lights as far as music?
No, I was very much the era of MTV and TRL. And so when I discovered MTV, I would race home every day after school and have this like precious window of time before my mom, who's a teacher, she would get home with my brother and sister. So I had about, I think, an hour to an hour and a half window where I could just sit on the couch and watch TRL and watch the countdown. And this was Britney and NSYNC, Backstreet Boys, Destiny's Child, that era. And I don't know if I thought about, wow, who's writing those songs? But I just remember thinking this feels authentic to me. I love this culture. I love this music. I want to be a part of it somehow. And, I was always interested in producing. Like I annoyingly produced the high school talent show, and I tried to model it after the VMAs, and so I was listening to that. I was initially before that only really listening to contemporary Christian music because that's all I knew existed. And so my celebrities were, Rachel Lampa and Christian boy bands and Christian girl groups and all of that. And then as I discovered other music, and then when I got to Belmont, I discovered Prince and Tears for Fears, and really started taking in music. And even now there's things that I wasn't exposed to growing up, where even this week I was homesick. So I just I watched a documentary on Laurel Canyon, and then I sat down on my couch and listened to the Pet Sounds album for the first time, front to back. I know some of the songs, of course, but just listening to it front to back, that was, there's so much that I still need to be exposed to. And thankfully with one of my jobs on Drag Race, I'm exposed to a lot. I'm taught a lot that I missed growing up, and that's really nice.
Wow. So that's interesting. So you grew up in a Christian home.
Mm-hmm.
Was there a lot of pressure not to listen to secular music or only to listen to Christian-based music?
There was. Yeah, There was. It wasn't so much that like you absolutely can't, but this was encouraged. And, I was very much in a routine of going to church a lot, singing. I just wanted to sing. So I sang, in praise and worship bands. And, I remember the fear of when I was like, I think I want to sing secular music, and the fear that rippled through the family, and but you have to rip that Band-Aid off at some point. And I'm glad I did.
Wow. But I've known people, writers, singers. Ryan Tedder is a guy who grew up doing worship music. I think it's a great training ground for pop songwriting because of the emotional content of worship music.
Absolutely.
Not to be crass about it, but there are musical techniques that evoke emotion.
Yep.
That can be lifted out of that spot and cranked right into some secular music.
You're absolutely right. And I hear that in Ryan's writing too.
Mm-hmm. So you feel like you're catching up on classic stuff that you weren't really exposed to. That's interesting.
All the time.
Wow. Who blew your mind the most when you were sort of, maybe you'd heard of them, but you never really dove into their catalog? Who was it? Prince?
It was, yeah, it was
Yeah.
Prince.
Yeah.
I am so grateful that I was able to see him perform, I think maybe 3 times when he did his residency at the Forum. And that tickets were, I think, like $15 to $20, and for like 15th row tickets. And He would play 3.5 hour sets and ride his bike off the stage and then ride his bike back on the stage for an encore and do 7 encores. And it was so inspiring and mind blowing. And then while I was at Belmont, I saw Beyonce come when she came through on tour, and that was also just mind blowing, the level of her expertise in her craft.
Yeah.
It was amazing to see people who were the best at what they do.
So do you think it was in college that you sort of started to explore other kinds of music, or was it earlier?
It was in college where I was able to do it sort of freely and without any inhibitions, and just explore, go to concerts, and then especially when I moved to LA, discovering music that made me feel uncomfortable, and then wondering why did it make me feel uncomfortable, and I love like finding things that make me feel uncomfortable, because it's really just me adjusting to the sort of conditioning that I grew up in, and I love, and I'm realizing that now too as I get older, I love when music, when movies, when a show or something makes me feel uncomfortable, because I want to figure out why, and I want to just seek more of those moments out. But it was college where I really sort of started to branch out.
Give us an example of uncomfortable. What do you mean by that? Lyrically, or just secular ideas, or things you were taught weren't right, or what do you mean?
All of the above, especially when it came to like Prince's wardrobe, and this duality of masculinity and femininity, and just expressing yourself however you want, or what feels authentic to you. And even now, I'm realizing that, like, okay, I identify as gay because that's a box that is really used to make other people feel more comfortable with how I'm labeling myself, and it was that was a great example. And so I would, when I would perform at Belmont, I would wear like gold bracelets, and that was a huge step for me. Or wearing a purple like deep V, and that was a huge step for me. And even though it might not have been that fashionable, it was a huge step for me, and just coming into my own and trying new things and feeling like, okay, that works for me, that doesn't work for me, that feels right. It's just constantly just exploring. And that's what I'm not even at a place now where I'm like, I know every aspect of myself. I know I'm still exploring that. Especially, this, we hustle so hard that sometimes we put discovering things about ourselves on the back burner, because we're just hustling and in the flow of work and wanting to session after session after session. And so it's nice when you have a moment to sit back and be like, okay, now I want to look inward.
Love it. And you, as you said before, it really opened something in my mind. It is such a hard job. I mean, it requires so much of your whole being to be a songwriter, and to do, and I'm not complaining, but it is a lot, and it doesn't have a lot of room to be talking or taking up any space in your brain, these other things. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Now, the point you made before is a great one. With all that, imagine throwing on top the prejudice of you being gay, and the acts and the outright blackballing that would go on, and how heartbreaking that could be. But in general, it is such a tough job that it's sort of equalizing in a way. It's like it's brutal to everyone.
That's exactly right. It's also hard to write about experiences when you're younger that you haven't had yet, and so that was something I remember growing up, driving down Highway 90, in Mississippi, and listening to these songs and hearing people say, this song changed my life. This song changed me. This song helped me go through a breakup. And I remember thinking, I've never cried to a song. I've never felt like that. But it wasn't until I got to Belmont and went through my first heartbreak that then I heard music differently. I was like, I get it now. I get it.
Wow. That's great, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. You have to, you have to have that experience for it to resonate with you. It's like you're a tuning fork and you're just wrapped up in masking tape, and you won't resonate until something breaks your heart, and then you do.
Exactly. Yeah.
Let me ask you this, and please tell me if I'm prying in areas you don't want to go, but you've made me so curious because I know we're all different, but I grew up in the South too. And I understand this dynamic you're talking about. Was it difficult for you to break free of the Southern mores and everything and let your parents know that you were gay and all these was that a difficult thing for you, or?
It was.
You can tell me if this is private and we'll cut it right out of the show.
No, you're totally fine. Like, it was difficult, of course. I mean, in one aspect, I remember moving to Belmont knowing exactly who I was, not feeling any shame or guilt about that. But I also knew that there was a fear of rejection. And, we all just want to make our parents proud, and so there was a fear in that. But I am so grateful to be in a really good place with my family. And also, as you get older, you have compassion because you recognize that if I grew up in the environment that they grew up in, I would probably think the same thing, and so that is when that clicked for me. That was really powerful. But, it sort of became inevitable where my parents are just overall proud, but my career it's meant to be this way, of course, but my career is just so gay that, and it's not me out there seeking.
Sorry, I didn't mean it was funny, but that's awesome.
No,
that's good.
It's not me out there seeking seeking these opportunities. It's at this point what comes to me and just what makes me happy. And what I ended up, I'm not out there only working with queer artists. I'm not out there only working on queer TV shows or queer movies, but it ended up being, and I also don't want to just work on queer content. I want to work on all sorts of things, but it is where I found success, and so many things came full circle, from potentially attending a conversion camp to then getting nominated for a Golden Globe for writing a song for a movie about a conversion camp that I think did a lot of good, and so that, and it was the same camp. The movie was about the same camp. So there are a lot of moments where I was like, wow, this is great. Life is crazy. And I'm so grateful that I was one of these stories of someone who hopefully helped. And I learned so much because, there's a difference between just like being against something and then being an activist against something. And so I learned so much through this process. And I'm so grateful that I can be a part of the story that hopefully does good. And yeah, because it really is. It's it's one full circle moment after another, and you just recognize it and keep moving.
Wow. A lot to unpack there, but my first thought was I absolutely adore the idea that you view your parents, because I'm a parent, and you view your parents as their limitations for how they grew up and what they, and then also throwing in their intentions and their heart. Mm-hmm. I think that's a powerful way to look at things. And I know people get in worse and very bad situations in this. I mean, parents can be awful and they need to be called out for it. But I love your approach, and I love the story, man. So were you considering a conversion? What
Not
do
at
they call
all.
it?
No, conversion camp, conversion
But
therapy.
you knew about it, or had it been talked about or something?
Yeah, it had been discussed, and I was like, no.
It seems so barbaric, man. I can't even believe that. It's like, is it still around? Does that still exist?
It is, yeah. Netflix just came out with a documentary about it. And then the movie I worked on, Boy Erased, which had Nicole Kidman and Russell Crowe.
That's
and
right.
Your friend Troy.
That's right.
That was a really important movie that was made, and I'm so grateful it was.
It's a fantastic movie. Yes.
So good. I only was able to watch it once, but yeah, I'm just grateful to have been spared from that experience, because there's already enough trauma going on, and there's so much trauma that comes with going through something like that, and some people don't make it out of it. Mm-hmm. So I'm just grateful to be in a place where I have been in a place where I knew that was not for me. And it's so interesting. I know this isn't a podcast about sexuality, but it really does.
Go. We love it. We love to talk about anything.
It does go closely, so hand in hand with my job and my career, but it doesn't. I've found that more people like to discuss my sexuality more than I do, or more people think about other people's sexuality more than the person themselves. Yeah.
Don't go away. Pitch List will be right back after the break. On the podcast, we always love to talk about struggle, because I feel like I get a lot of emails from people who listen to the podcast who are newer writers, some young, some midlife. It doesn't matter. It's kind of new to it, looking into it, kind of, when you're at that point. And I always love to take a successful person like you and talk about times that were difficult in your career.
Yeah.
For inspiration. And we don't know each other, but I'd be shocked if you didn't have some times where you're, laying your head on your steering wheel going, God, I can't do this,
Oh, I mean, when my friend, one of my best friends, he rode with me from Nashville to LA, and I dropped off a bunch of stuff in Mississippi, and then, took I-10 to LA. And as we were pulling into I-10, I blew a tire, and I moved to LA with $300, and the tire, I think, cost $150. Got a ticket in Texas, on a speeding ticket on the way to LA that I couldn't afford to pay. And at one point I was back in Nashville visiting friends and got pulled over to find out my license was suspended and I was like, I can't come back to Nashville for a court date because I've got a job in LA that if I lose this job, I have to move home, So it truly was, I survived in LA by I did the drive in 2 days and immediately got a job catering. And I catered for about 4 years until I got a job at a college teaching music or teaching songwriting. And I did that job for around 2.5 years. And there's 15 assistant jobs and also sprinkled into that time. I auditioned for a wedding cover band at one point that I didn't make, and then catered Kim Kardashian's wedding to Chris Humphries, and that cover band was performing a week after I had auditioned and not made it into the band.
Wow.
I ended up being in a wedding band for a while, and it was just an absolute nightmare. And we would do 3.5-hour sets for $7, and I would get paid $75.
Wow.
Sometimes I joked about I would lose money going to these gigs. And initially too, when I got to LA, I did extra work where I would, be extras and an extra in a TV show or a movie or something like that. And I don't know if it sounds glamorous, but I hope it doesn't, because it wasn't. You're getting paid $8 an hour, and for an 8 hours, that's $64. And then they take taxes out of it. So at the end of the day, you're left with $47, $48.
And they keep you herded up in a corner or a little room or on a bus. You don't get to meet anybody.
Correct.
You don't need to eat at the same cafeteria as everybody else.
Right. You don't, a lot of the times we didn't get catering, but I just did whatever I had to do. I was like, this I'm doing. And I also, during that time, it wasn't just struggling and working. I was making friends. I moved to LA with a bunch of Belmont friends. And so we were always hustling and working on music. And and having a lot of fun, but it was also very, very hard. And I was always, 1-2 week stint of not having work away from moving home. And, but I was just very determined. I did, I think, move to LA with the advantage of having a publishing deal. So all of this was happening while I had a publishing deal. I signed with EMI Publishing my senior year of college.
That's unusual. Wow.
It was. And I thought it was a joke. I thought, it was a scam or something like that. But because I never met my publishers or spoke to them or anything until after I signed and then took a trip to LA, because I had a very interesting manager at the time who it was a brief thing, and he ended up taking part of my advance and running with it. But luckily I was able to get out of my management contract with him because of that. But he was very much a gatekeeper between myself and my publisher. And then when he was removed from the situation, I was able to develop a relationship with John Platt, who is a dear friend now, and Katie Vinton, who was his assistant at the time. And she helped me a lot. And now, I want to say 12 or 13 years later, I have a beautiful relationship with Sony Music Publishing, formerly EMI, formerly, Sony ATV and all of that. But no, it was an absolute struggle. And my group of friends, my friend Sarah, who wrote Levitating for Dua and Dark Horse for Katie and many, many other big songs. But I would go to her studio that her and her boyfriend had, and they were living in their studio. And we were all just like collectively struggling, but collectively hustling. Mm-hmm. And one by one, someone in our group of friends would have their moment. Yep. And I want to say I was the last one. And I remember like looking around being like, okay, I know that I'm the last one. I know it's going to happen. I don't know how, but I know that I'm around the right people.
Yep.
And I remember, I was teaching at Musicians Institute, and I would have my friends, as they would find success, come and be guest speakers for my songwriting classes. And I remember thinking, God, when am I going to be in the position where people want me to be a guest speaker? I knew what I was talking about, but I had not a single credit to my name to back that up. But by teaching songwriting, I was getting better. And when I first moved to LA, a lot of the artists that I found success with weren't artists yet. They weren't old enough to be artists yet. So I just had to go through this hustle, and it was a lot of fun, but it was very hard. I was like an assistant for one of the directors of P90X, that workout program. And I was an assistant to this incredible woman, Jessica Bendinger, who wrote the movie Bring It On. And she let me like help renovate and clean out her garage for $15 an hour. And that allowed me to stay in LA. There are these people in these moments that if that had not happened, I would have had to move home. But it was also through, like, my grandparents gave me a credit card to Sam's Club to go get groceries. So I would, for the first year, I would go get groceries once a month at Sam's Club, and just had this, like I already said before, but this like blind hustle and blind ambition of like, I just got to do it. This is a part of it. And I never, of course, it was frustrating. There were moments where I would, like you said, like I sat in the car and I was like, you've got to be kidding me. But I never complained, or I never thought I was above what I was doing. And that's something that I occasionally see in a new writer that moves to LA with a bit of entitlement and a bit of like, I'm here and I want to skip the line. And it's like, you can't.
No. And if you do, it'll be the kiss of death, because you'll end up on a song that your co-writers wrote. Now you think you're a genius and you're not. It's going to be a disaster. There's no skipping the line.
Yep. Yeah.
I love the story, man. And what happened? Your story is the story. You do what it takes to get there. You have a little bit of faith that God's going to provide one way or the other, And of course, I always tell people, if it doesn't work out, your hometown will still be there. It's not going to get erased. You can go back, and you find your way, you find your people, you dig in, you work your ass off. And I love that you said not above. You never felt like you were above doing what you had to do.
Yeah.
that's the attitude I see in almost everyone I've ever seen that was successful at this.
Mm-hmm.
Let's cut forward now. What was the first big break for you?
The first big song was a song by an artist named Dea called Hideaway.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Big song.
And that was wild because, she was not an artist, not signed to a major label. And she was visiting LA, and I was asked, like, hey, one of my dear friends, Gino Barletta, he said, hey, I've got an artist in town that I'm working with, or a girl in town that I'm working with that I used to give vocal lessons to. Come over, and it's $150 to hang out and write a song. And I was like, boom, I'm there. And that day we wrote Hideaway, and I played that demo later that night for a friend. We were sitting outside of Amoeba on Sunset, and he was like, that's a hit. And I was like, okay, but like, he's like, that's going to be a big song with that girl. And I was like, well, no, you don't understand. She's not an artist. That's not possible. Like, there's no label, there's no structure. Like, and then a year later it was top 5 on pop radio.
Yeah, because it's a hit song. I say it all the time on our podcast. If you truly write a hit song, you can hand it around to a few people. There are 6 degrees to the top. I guarantee you, it will make its way.
Yeah.
What a great story. Now I got to go back. What was the $150 for? Who got that? And
it was just her parents were like paying us to hang out and write that day. And like, she wanted to observe a writing session.
Oh, right on.
So that's really what it was.
That's more of an LA thing. Although I have heard that's happening here in Nashville some too.
Yeah. And she had, to this day, she's a dear friend, and she is a wonderful artist. She's an incredible artist. To see her come into her own, and she took that hit song and ran with it in the best way, and ended up winning a Grammy a year and a half later with the Chainsmokers for Don't Let Me Down. And we had a beautiful run together, and so many beautiful experiences. And that also, I don't know how common this is, but like, we were hustling to make Hideaway a hit. When I went home to Mississippi at one point, when that song started getting played on the radio, and it got played on Sirius XM first, each writer went home for the holidays and went to their respective hometown radio stations, and we got that song added, because we all I drove Dea to radio visit after radio visit, and I made probably 500 Christmas cards that we would send out to radio stations. Like, we were determined, we felt the momentum, and I was like, okay, this is it. And then at the same time, I'd become friends with Troye Sivan through a mutual friend, and we had started writing. And so right around the time Hideaway came out, Troy's first single, Youth, came out. And so those were both climbing together. And I thought to myself, oh my God, is this the new normal? Like, I'm just gonna have a song on the radio all the time. And then you realize that's not normal. And then it's back to the drawing board and hustling again all over for it.
Yeah. And unfortunately, that's, it's not unfortunate. It's the way the job works, and there's a beauty to it too. It's down up. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Valleys, and then there's times when you don't have something on the radio, and they could be long, and then you come back up, rise like the phoenix. The beauty of our job is only one song. It takes one song. Any day you could write a song that get you a -- 1 record, and you're right back in the middle. Yeah. It's and I think it's fabulous for that. I love your story about promoting that single. Back in the day, my wife and I used to write most of our stuff together that we got cut. We had a couple early hits that turned out to be big hits, but she was like that. She would wear us, me and her, all friends, their friends' kids, calling radio stations.
Yep.
I mean, she had a list of numbers and friends that she would distribute, and she would bug the shit out of them. Did you call them? Did you call this station? And they would say, call it. And she'd say, call again, and give them another name and use a different voice. And she would.
That is very me. I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. My wife, Amy Mayo, that's how she is. And she will, it's crazy. She does it to this day. I mean, she has a book out this year. We have a local bookstore called Parnassus, and they sell the book in there, and they've sold quite a few of her book. She'll go in about once every 5 days and make sure it's on the end cap.
Absolutely. I would do that.
You know what I mean?
We've all done this, where you go to Target and you see a CD of an artist you've worked on, and you're like, let me make sure that CD is like
exactly
right at eye level in the dead center. Let me just let me move Ed Sheeran one to the right.
It's right, man. But all the good ones have that hustle. You know,
Yeah.
That's why I think our songwriting business favors hustle over talent. It's a blend.
It's a very strange blend that is constantly shifting, you know,
Yep.
and it's like,
It's true.
And really it's inconsistent in a beautiful way, where sometimes I'm in a room and I lead the session, or I come in with the idea and or come in with the chorus, come in with the concept. And then some days I'm there just to make people laugh and be good energy.
Yeah.
And tweak a couple words, or be like, that feels right, that doesn't feel right. So it's really, I love that some days I am needed more than others. And some days I'm there just to have a good time and help write the song a little bit. I am grateful for the self-awareness to know how to adapt to that and not feel like if all my ideas aren't heard today, it's a failure. It's like, no,
Right.
I'm just trying to get the best song, whether that comes from my brain or my collaborator who is a genius, you know?
Yep. And I've always thought of it like a sports analogy, you know, and I'm not a huge basketball fan, but in that game, they get what's called a hot hand, where one guy is just nailing 3-pointers. He can just shoot from really, and he's just got in the zone or whatever that is. Well, they just keep feeding him the ball, man.
Yeah.
Now, these other guys are pro level players and they can hit shots too. But when they recognize that someone's on the run, man, they just feed him the ball. And that's what we do in our writers' rooms. It's not that everybody in there's talented, but you recognize when somebody's got a hot hand.
Yeah.
You assist them.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then that hot hand could be you some days. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I think it's great to feel on and to feel like, okay, to have that clear vision for the song. But I also love, you know, I found myself getting called a lot lately to tweak songs, to finish songs, to help with a lyric rewrite. And I love doing that, because for me now, I love being presented a song and I can, a lot of the time, listen to it, look at the lyric and see what doesn't work. And I love doing that. And I love being asked to do that.
Wow. They used to, the old days, that was called a song doctor.
Amazing.
Isn't that great?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's great. And that's a whole other skill set, man. The 20,000 foot view, you know, like,
yes.
Because sometimes when you get in the heat of the battle of writing a song, you're not really looking at the big picture, and things can get missed, little things.
Yeah.
And that's awesome, man. But before we go, I want to talk about, because I was looking for your stuff. You have stuff on Spotify, you as an artist.
Yeah.
Right. I looked through YouTube. There's a few things, but do you have a record coming out, or have you put one out recently, or?
So I have a deal with Universal, and I love doing so many different things that when an opportunity comes, if it feels right, I say yes. And then, as always, then my own project goes to the back burner.
Yeah.
But I've had some beautiful experiences. Troy took me on tour as his opener for the Bloom tour, and we toured the entire world together, and the United States and Europe. And it was just an amazing experience. And, my expectations shift as I get older. My goals shift as I get older. But I have a song coming out on September 17th with a dear friend who's a huge DJ named Felix Yen. And so he and I wrote this song together, and I'm featured on it. And it was very sweet that he left me on the song, or wanted me to stay on the song. And so I'm excited to have those experiences of, like, I'm going to be going to Germany and performing at a bunch of festivals with him, and having that experience, and doing festivals all over the world together. I think it's truly just like, I see, and I know you know this too, but like, when I dedicate 100% of my focus onto something, it tends to work out. And if it doesn't, that's okay. But I've yet to dedicate 100% of my focus on my artist project. But yet beautiful opportunities tend to happen, and that's amazing. And so I think there will be a chapter where I am fully focused on it, but it's not right now, and that's okay. And right now, my focus is I'm music directing a TV show that I'm headed to London to go into production for. But my focus has been on writing songs with friends, and like Troy and Selena and Duncan Lawrence, Martin Garrix, and just writing songs with friends, but like co-writers. But I've also been working on RuPaul's Drag Race now for, I want to say 4 or 5 years. And I've learned so much, and I've been able to I've been able to marry my pop sensibilities with comedy. And I grew up loving comedy. And then today I actually had a song come out with Tanya Tucker, and it's a duet that I wrote for Ru and Tanya Tucker. And it's on our season finale, which just came out today. And so to develop this like beautiful friendship with Tanya has been something that I never expected, and that I'm so grateful for. And to like call her a friend and to record her voice and spend time with her in the studio and go to dinner with her and hear stories and trade stories. And I'm just really right now open to experiences. And so when something comes along that feels right, I say yes and I go with it. And even right now, my career is definitely pivoting to TV and film, where I'm like executive producing shows and I worked on a show called Love Victor for the first 2 seasons on Hulu, and where I was able to bring in so many friends and so many queer artists and work with huge artists, and also give platforms to up and coming artists that I love. And so I'm just open right now. I love writing pop music. Whenever Troy wants to write, I'm always there. He is a priority to me, and also that friendship is a priority to me, but also, Ava Max is a dear friend who thankfully we had a big song together last year with Kings and Queens. And we're hopefully gearing up to do it again, finishing up her album now. So my hustle is different now at this stage. I'm not out there doing sessions every single day. I'm doing a few sessions here and there, but mostly I'm enjoying learning new skills. I'm enjoying trying different jobs and having different experiences. And then I think at a certain point I will, because I miss my friends and I miss being in the studio every day. In that way, I will pivot back to that hustle of like going in and trying to, write great songs.
Man, that's great. So I love your approach. You're not really moving toward one target. You're sort of experiencing life, right? And just taking what looks great and what you would enjoy.
Yeah. It's interesting to be on this side of things because you don't really know how it happened. I mean, I'm not the first person to experience this, but it is strange to experience it, of moving to LA, sleeping on couches, staying with friends for free, truly having no money, thinking like, because of student loans, thank you, Belmont, I will never be able to buy a house, and then buying a house, and buying it with money that you made from writing songs with friends. That it's a very strange thing to experience. I bought a house in Nashville at 5 Points, and that I still can't believe that. I still can't believe that I have a place that I get to go to in Nashville, and a place where I get to have my friends over for New Year's Eve every year. And it's crazy. And even having a number one in country music, I didn't think that, not that I didn't think that ever was going to happen, but it just seems so impossible. And then it happens, It is crazy. I mean, the variety that you're working on, from RuPaul's show to a country hit, that's about as wide of a swing as you could get, I guess. And I think that is I think it's the culmination of all of these things that I just feel represented. I feel like all of these things make up who I am. And I have worked hard to not be pigeonholed into one specific thing. As a country writer, as a pop writer, as a gay writer, as a comedy writer, I want to be seen as just a good songwriter that can pop in and out if I'm needed or wanted, and can hopefully deliver something great, and knowing my strengths, you know, like, and knowing if, okay, that's not, I know that that is not my strength. So either let me pivot and do something else, or let me bring someone in who is good at that, you know?
Right. Wow. So how much time do you spend in Nashville?
Not as much as I wish, you know?
Yeah, I was figuring you weren't, but you said you had a house here. So
yeah, not as much as with COVID, I actually spent quite a bit of time there,
right?
Because I wanted to be close to my family in Mississippi. Yeah. So we did the cross-country drive with my dog and rode out COVID in Nashville. And also the tornado, my house was like hit, but it was fine, or not fine, but like, it's okay now and all fixed. But like my house was one of the houses that got hit by the tornado. Right after, I can't remember the order correctly, if COVID happened and then the tornado, or if the tornado and then COVID. But
there were two tornadoes. There were two tornadoes that went through your neighborhood within like a year of each other.
Yep.
I think the second one was worse, and I think it was before COVID.
Got it. So I think it was.
Right, I don't know either. I
think it was right before COVID, and that was wild, because when I eventually got back to Nashville, my neighborhood was, devastated.
Yeah.
And thankfully, I live on Woodland, and it was the street behind, it was like one street over that really got the brunt of it, where like houses were destroyed and demolished and all of that. Yeah. But my goal is to spend so much more time there, and my family loves coming up there. It's easier for them to drive, up to Nashville than to fly to LA. So I do hope to spend a lot more time there. I definitely have this desire for land and to like be around animals and have a little bit of a farm or something at some point. So
I love it.
Yeah. So, I mean, Nashville definitely is where my heart is, but I also feel like there's a lot of experiences I want to have outside of LA, outside of Nashville.
Awesome. And Southwest flies like 4 times a day.
They do. And
it's not hard. You know what I mean? Just get on the plane and go.
Direct from Burbank to Nashville. It's amazing.
Yeah. Leland, I could talk to you for 3 more hours, man. I could get a coffee refill and we could just jabber. I really enjoyed it, man. I love your approach to life. I love your, I just love it when someone's just doing whatever they want to do. You know what I mean? And not getting pigeonholed or not. I mean, I just love that you're writing country, you're writing TV shows, you have I love it all, man. I'm really impressed with you. I can't wait for when you focus on a record for yourself.
Thank you.
I really can't wait to hear what that's going to be. And one thing we didn't say, you're very self-effacing, which is great, but we have to add one thing before we get out of here. The reason this is all happening for you is that you're a badass, man. You're a badass and you've been a badass. These people, this ain't just happening because you're a hustler. I just don't want it to come off that way.
Right.
You're amazing. I mean, I've heard your songs and your feel, and you're a badass.
That's so nice. Thank you.
That's why you got what you got, and you busted your ass.
Yeah. You know that it's a combination. It is of just being good at what you do, knowing your strengths. I am excited. I know there will be a chapter where I focus on my own project, and I'm excited for that. I have people here who push me to do that and who want to work with me on that project. And that's so amazing. But, I think, and it's hard to shake the underdog mentality. And so it's something where I feel like, every day I feel like I'm more and more just coming into my own and feeling confident without feeling cocky. But you have to have this confidence to navigate the music industry and to find yourself in rooms and to put yourself out there and say, I need to be a part of this, and to think you deserve a seat at the table. And for me, it was like, there was a lot of times where I didn't feel like I had a seat at the table. So I was like, fuck it. I'm going to like build my own table and invite my own friends. And that's sort of how I've operated, was like, okay, cool. I'm not like feeling accepted over here. I'm going to do my own thing and have people come to me. And that is a way that I've operated, and I love it.
Yeah. And I just have to say, for everyone listening, and I've said this before, that's the story. When you start this, there's no door they're going to let you in. So you have to go gather your little army of people and make your thing happen and do your own thing. And then the door opens. But that's always the story. You can't get into the writing sessions you want to get into, yada, 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 but you find your people and you bust your ass, and then you get something they don't have, and then they want you.
Yeah. That's
how it works.
That is
Leland, thank you so much. Thank you so much for being on Pitch List. Can't wait to follow your career and see all the cool stuff you do, man. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Pitch List, produced in partnership with the American Songwriter Podcast Network. If you enjoyed today's show, please subscribe to us on Apple Podcast or your preferred listening platform. And if you want, feel free to leave us a 5-star rating and review. For exclusive content from this week's guest and more, you can visit our website at pitchlistpodcast.com or follow our social media pages on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. To hear songs written and or recorded by today's guest, check out this week's playlist by finding us on Spotify at Pitch List Podcast. Plus, don't forget to let us know on social media what songwriter, musician, or music business professional you want to hear from next. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time.